This video is about percentages of UFO sightings along West Searsville Road in Orange County, New York during 1993 and 1994. In 1992, I began disciplined observation of all aerial objects flying over the Wallkill River Valley along a county road on the west side of the valley. Not far to the north, where West Searsville Road intersects Hill Avenue, groups of skywatchers gathered several times a week to watch for anomalous objects in the sky. I wanted to test Dr. Ellen Crystal's theory that the frequency of UFOs in the area was due to an underground alien base. She presented this theory in her 1991 book, Silent Invasion. In this video, I present the detailed field notes that I took, along with some images captured on camera of AOP or anomalous observational phenomena on 12 November 1993 and on 26 March 1994. During those nights, 86 flying machines or lights were recorded in my notes, 15 of which were judged as anomalous because of their unusual low altitude, that is, they flew below 1,500 feet, or anomalous movements, that is, hovering, diving, erratic changes in direction during flight. The percentages of UAP were 14% for November 1993 and 29% for 1994, which may seem extraordinarily high, except for the fact that between 1992 and 1994 I documented 65 UFOs, the highest number recorded during an 11-year period of observation, where 100 sightings were recorded starting in 1992 and ending in 2003. The 5 sightings on 28 April 1993 and the 7 sightings on 29 April 1993 represent the times of the performance, highlighted in orange on the chart. It was a unique event when at least 6 craft showed up at the same time to perform before the sightings TV camera crew, Ellen Crystal, and myself. This event rivals that shown in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But this event really happened in Pine Bush, New York, and is chronicled on the BUFOD website under the name The Performance, at the link provided. When Dr. Crystal began her fieldwork near Pine Bush in 1980, she had the highest number of sightings and closest encounters with UFOs for the 10-year period of investigation reported in her book. This initial spike in sightings appears to be part of the hook that gets field investigators and skywatchers committed to putting in unusual amounts of time and energy trying to understand and explain the phenomenon. Here I present and describe 31 pages from my pocket field notes for these 2 recorded periods of observation, which includes such information as time, location, azimuth, elevation, and descriptions. Some of the anomalous craft were photographed, and those sightings are indicated with red circled times of camera exposure. 2 of these sightings are presented here because they are so unusual. The first set of 4 pages are for the night of 12 November 1993. Between 7:29 p.m. and 8:07 p.m., 13 aerial objects were recorded, 2 of which were UFOs. Between 8:10 p.m. and 8:44 p.m., 14 aerial objects were recorded, 3 of which were UFOs. Between 8:44 p.m. and 9:15 p.m., 21 aerial objects were recorded, 5 of which were UFOs. At 9:15 p.m., 3 aerial objects were recorded. In total, 65 aerial objects were recorded, 10 of which turned out to be UFOs when the pictures for the 9:04 to 9:09 p.m. sightings were discovered to be a UFO after the pictures were analyzed. The percentages of UFOs recorded on this evening was 15%. When Dr. Crystal began her fieldwork near Pine Bush in 1980, she had the highest number of sightings and closest encounters with UFOs for the 10-year period of investigation reported in her book. This initial spike in sightings appears to be part of the hook that gets field investigators and skywatchers committed to putting in unusual amounts of time and energy trying to understand and explain the phenomenon. Here I present and describe 31 pages from my pocket field notes for these two recorded periods of observation, which includes such information as time, location, azimuth, elevation, and descriptions. Some of the anomalous craft were photographed, and those sightings are indicated with red circled times of camera exposure. Two of these sightings are presented here because they are so unusual. The first set of 4 pages are for the night of 12 November 1993. Between 7:29 p.m. and 8:07 p.m., 13 aerial objects were recorded, 2 of which were UFOs. Between 8:10 p.m. and 8:44 p.m., 14 aerial objects were recorded, 3 of which were UFOs. Between 8:44 p.m. and 9:15 p.m., 21 aerial objects were recorded, 5 of which were UFOs. At 9:15 p.m., 3 aerial objects were recorded. In total, 65 aerial objects were recorded, 10 of which turned out to be UFOs when the pictures for the 9:04 to 9:09 p.m. sightings were discovered to be a UFO after the pictures were analyzed. The percentages of UFOs recorded on this evening was 15%. The second set of 27 pages are for the night of 26 March 1994. Pat Huff Cornet and Bruce Cornet went to West Searsville Road and Fleury Bowman Road to skywatch. We both had SLR cameras on tripods. We recorded 21 lights moving in the sky between 8:12 p.m. and 10:15 p.m., 15 of which were probably conventional aircraft, but 6 were UFOs. The UFO activity peaked at 10 p.m. At 29% UFOs, this is one of the highest percentages of unidentified or anomalous aerial craft we recorded during the 11 years of skywatching in the area. We began taking pictures of airplanes at 8:12 p.m. 26 March was a Saturday, and there was a lot of traffic for the rural country road. Between 8:15 p.m. and 9:29 p.m., I recorded 32 vehicles passing us on Fleury Bowman Road. We did not begin to see any UAP until 8:44 p.m. Before then, I recorded what I thought were 10 conventional aircraft lights and took pictures of 5 of them. One was very low in altitude at 8:13 p.m., but was not seen long enough to detect any anomalies. Then at 8:43 p.m., the first brilliant light, brighter than normal, was observed, and I began taking a series of photographs of it. 6 time exposures were taken of this UFO. This was our first UFO for the night. The sharp turn before heading south and the erratic movement indicated an unconventional aircraft or UFO. The craft appeared to be making a lazy S skyglyph. If you look at the beginning of the first light trace, there is a prominent tail, which is the hallmark of a plasma light jumping upwards, signaling that the pilot knew when I opened the shutter to my camera. During the performance on 29 April 1993, the dates of which are highlighted in the sightings chronology graph at the beginning of this video, 6 UFOs moved in the night sky and were captured on time exposures. When the camera shutter opened, each light jumped, making a tail, which indicated cognition of when my time exposure began. How was that accomplished? Can human pilots in conventional aircraft do that? 4 of the lights were captured in the same time exposure, and each one produced a tail, but they were all oriented in slightly different directions. Hard to do if caused by a single camera movement. Significant amounts of evidence were given to Ellen, Crystal, and me during 1992, 1993, and 1994, evidence which is beyond the technology we commonly associate with conventional aircraft. So whose technology was this, and why was it being given to us? Going back to my field notes, another anomaly of this 26 March event was the short period of time my shutter remained opened. The shutter continued to close on its own, as if the electronics were being interfered with and the battery momentarily affected, since the shutter is held open so long as a current is moving through the shutter's electronic mechanism. The shutter closes when I release the electronic button, or when some outside influence stops the current. This problem was encountered on 5 October 1993, when I took 7 time exposures, but couldn't keep the shutter open for more than 20 seconds. This event occurred on October 1993, 5 months before the dates on my field notes shown here. 7 time exposures were taken. 2 UFOs were witnessed between 10:43 p.m. and 11 p.m. A tail flare occurred at the beginning of the first time exposure. A light climbed slowly, then vertically. The camera battery was being drained because I could not keep the shutter open for more than 20 seconds. Fred Brock and I were witnesses. Soon after that event on 5 October 1993, another UFO light appeared at 11:02 p.m. and continued to perform until 11:04 p.m. It produced 3 anomalies, one at the beginning of each of 3 time exposures. A flare tail occurred at the beginning of the first time exposure. An upwards directed light tail occurred at the beginning of the second time exposure, and an exaggerated oscillation occurred at the beginning of the third time exposure, which continued for at least 3 seconds into that exposure. The camera battery was still being slowly drained. I could not keep the camera shutter open for more than 20 seconds. The batteries were charged, but the problem persisted. Going back to my 26 March 1994 field notes, another small light appeared at 9:23 p.m. in the same location where the previous light had disappeared, and it was tracked with 4 time exposures until 9:28 p.m. with the comment that it may have been a small plane from Stewart Airport on the other side of the valley. After those exposures, Pat and I left this area at 9:30 p.m. and drove to the Dogleg Bend in West Searsville Road and took up skywatching there. We found Vinny and Nick there already photographing lights in the sky. Vinny Police, Vinny is short for Vincent, is the author of The Pine Bush Phenomenon, published in 2005. We soon noticed 2 unusually bright lights coming towards us, one coming down the valley from the north, and the other coming towards us from the east. I wrote in my notes, a very interesting light coming towards us from the north down the valley, another bright light to the east coming towards us. Almost 18 months later, I took this picture of Pat with 2 other friends on West Searsville Road near Hill Avenue, where the Skywatch group frequently gathered. 2 years later, skywatching along rural roads was outlawed by a local ordinance because realtors wanted to build along this road, and they claimed we were lowering property values. Fred Max is the hypnotherapist who recovered the first memories of Betty, Andreas, and Luca, whose alien adventures are recorded in the book Watchers and Watchers 2 by Raymond Fowler. Fred Max also regressed me in 1995 in order to recover information on my abduction at an oil drilling well site near Richmond, Virginia. Rory Milliken was on a fact-finding expedition from Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. I took 2 photographs of the light coming from the east. Then Pat called my attention to the one coming straight down the valley towards us over West Searsville Road from the north. I began taking photographs of it at 9:54 p.m. Pat took 2 pictures. I took 5 time exposures. When the craft flew directly over us, I saw that it was anomalous. It was delta-shaped and looked like an arrowhead. It was flat black or stealth in color. It flew much too slowly to be a conventional fixed-wing aircraft dependent on wings for lift. When it flew over us, the UFO had a low-volume, subdued, jet-like thrust sound. Its lighting was strange, however. Its shape and proportions were way off from that of a conventional or military aircraft. Then Pat and I experienced a paranormal event. We both were affected by some sort of projected energy. At 9:50 p.m., I began having difficulty talking and I was losing my breath, having a hard time getting enough oxygen. I had difficulty concentrating on my thoughts. Pat was similarly influenced. I felt the top of my head, and it was hot. Pat felt it and was surprised by how hot my crown chakra was, as if energy had been beamed down by the UFO into my brain. I then began having visions of a strange, large, circular, dish-shaped object made out of sand-colored stone, with a raised egg-shaped hump in its middle, and hieroglyphs carved all around it. I would later discover that this egg and disc shape had historical significance to our ancestors. Then a car came down West Searsville Road. I was still breathing rapidly, as if excited, and my heart rate increased for no apparent reason. We then had conversations with Vinny and Nick, who told us of seeing multicolored lights coming out of the ground earlier that evening. All the lights were mirror images of one another. When we got my photographs back, I immediately spotted anomalies. There were tails at the beginnings of most of the light traces. The tails also indicated these lights were plasmas under the control of electromagnetic fields around the craft, one which could be shaped in order to produce looping plasma movement. The fourth time exposure shows only part of a curved tail, which was unfortunately cut off during printing. A complete drawing of that curl is shown next to the photograph, and it indicates a deliberate act on the part of the pilot to make a sign that no conventional aircraft or camera movement could easily duplicate. The loops and spirals made after a tail in time exposure 3 are almost identical to loops and spirals made by the Boeing 707 shaped UFO and small plane-like UFO that transformed from a ball of plasma light on 24 September 1992, nearly 17 months earlier near Middletown, New York. These performances are the subject of 2 other YouTube videos. Shown here are 2 photographs of tails produced by the central lights just after the shutter opened. Note that the outboard lights do not jump. This is a characteristic of UFOs in this area. All craft that produced tight loops, as the above craft did, with their lights is something that conventional aircraft cannot do. These tails became hallmark signatures of our visitors and their unconventional technology and telepathic ability. At about 10 p.m., as Pat and I were leaving the area, we had another UFO encounter at the intersection of Route 52 and Albany Post Road, about a couple miles away. It was 10:15 p.m. when we stopped on the shoulder after turning right onto Albany Post Road. We saw a white light with red tail strobe very low to the ground at treetop level. It first moved from our left to right, west to east, then turned without banking, moved a short distance west before turning again to the south. The UFO passed the traffic light just to the west of the intersection and proceeded south over farm fields. I took about 5 to 6 photographs with my 400mm lens, changing exposure time. I lengthened exposure with each shot. I had trouble focusing the camera on the UFO lights, but the trees in the foreground would be in focus, I thought. The last 3 pictures should be okay, I told myself. We then drove to Sonny's Diner, getting there at about 10:25 p.m., and unfortunately, none of the pictures turned out. On this particular night of 26 March 1993, Pat and I witnessed some of the highest UFO activity in this area near Pine Bush, New York, higher than any other night between 1992 and 1997. UFO means unidentified flying object. It does not mean alien spacecraft, although many people think it is synonymous with ET visitation. 21 lights were visible and recorded flying over the valley that night between 8:12 p.m. and 10:15 p.m., of which 6 were unidentified or identified as unconventional or of unknown origin due to their strange shapes and flight characteristics. That number represents a staggering 29%, with the highest activity after 9 p.m. It is generally assumed that no more than 10% of UFOs reported by witnesses are truly unexplained, not 10% of all air traffic in the night sky. At least 3 of these UFOs were photographed doing acrobatic stunts that conventional aircraft are incapable of making. So you be the judge. Whose technology did we witness? And why were they putting on performances for civilian witnesses with unsecured cameras on the ground? 70 cases of UFO sightings for 1992 and 1993 were graphed according to times of encounter, and overlaid on Jacques Vallée's graph from Appendix 1 of his 1991 book, Revelations, Alien Contact and Human Deception. The sightings reported here in October and November of 1993 and March of 1994 at 9, 10, and 11 p.m. on those dates, that is, 21, 22, and 23 p.m. military time, fall in the peak period of UFO activity worldwide. This preference for that period of day by the pilots of these craft may be based on human activity, since most of the sightings of craft with lights on them are intentional and not incidental. That is why I recorded the automobile traffic on Fleury-Bowman Road on 26 March 1994 for Saturday night between 8:15 p.m. and 9:29 p.m., that is, 20:15 p.m. and 21:29 p.m. military time, in order to show a possible correlation with when the local people would start to go out traveling at night. Similar results were obtained by Dr. Massimo Teodorani in a comparative, analytical, and observational study of North American databases on unidentified aerial phenomena, published by NARCAP in 2009. I conclude this presentation with a question. Why would anyone present human observers with information that challenges their senses and beliefs, unless it was intended to get them to question those faculties? Would extraterrestrial visitors do this? Or would the intelligence community of regional governments do this? And for what reason? It would appear that the night sky is a vast classroom, as it was for our ancestors, who would marvel at the number and distribution of stars in the heavens, and become frightened when anything moved across the sky, such as a comet or eclipse. Was this deception, as many investigators want us to believe, or was it education by the gods?
Geez, looks like a congregation, whatever they are.
Yeah, that's what the hell. What is going on there?
I've never seen this before.
There's 4. I got all 4 in the video. You know, this is awfully big not to hear sound now.
And this low to the ground.
Oh boy. Yeah, this is shipped. I mean, a C5 isn't going to bank like that. The hell? Oh, look at this. The hell?
Holy shit.
The hell is that? That's solid underneath. Listen to the noise it's making.
That ain't the sound of a jet.
No, well, not even a C5. The C5 we would still be able to see wings and fuselage.
I remember we seen C5s and you'd hear them 5 miles away.
Yeah.